For years he lived alone on the edge of the Wild West, until a towering Apache widow arrived and turned his world upside down. This thrilling story reveals what happened that unforgettable day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Where are you watching from? Let's get started. Caleb Rourke had lived alone on the far edges of the Arizona Territory for so long that the land itself felt like his only neighbor. 13 years of sun-bleached seasons had hardened him into a man of silence, a man who spoke more to cattle and creaking barn doors than he ever did to the people in town. The locals called him the Lone Rancher, and he carried the title without complaint. Loss had carved him hollow long ago, and he preferred the predictable rhythm of dust, dawn, and quiet work to the unpredictable weight of human hearts. But that particular afternoon, as he rode the fence line near Red Mesa Ridge, he felt the air shift. The wind carried something new, something heavy, something unfamiliar. At first he thought he was imagining the silhouette against the burning sky, but as he rode closer, the shape sharpened into a striking figure, a tall woman standing beside a collapsed Mustang. What made Caleb narrow his eyes wasn't her size, though she stood taller and broader than any woman he had ever seen. It was the morning paint traced down her cheeks like falling shadows. Her clothing marked her as White Mountain Apache, crafted with leather skill and adorned with turquoise beads that shimmered faintly even under the harsh sun. Her hair was thick, braided tightly, and her posture was one of discipline rather than despair. The fallen Mustang continued to breathe shallowly, but the woman hadn't abandoned it. She stood guard beside the animal as though no danger on the frontier could frighten her. Caleb stopped several paces away, lowering his rifle to show he meant no harm. "You hurt?" he called out, keeping his voice calm. The woman turned toward him with eyes that held a storm inside them, dark, steady, unafraid. "My horse is," she replied. Her voice carried the low, resonant strength of someone who had lived through battles, both seen and unseen. "And I am far from my people." Caleb dismounted slowly, approaching with the caution of a man who respected the border between companionship and intrusion. He knelt beside the Mustang, inspecting its trembling legs and cracked hooves. "Exhaustion," Caleb muttered. "Needs water and rest. You too, I'd wager." The woman did not move. "I am Nayeli," she said simply, "widow of Chaska." Caleb nodded, understanding now the mourning paint. In Apache tradition, a widow wore the grief openly for all to see. Her strength didn't erase the loss, it only made her stand straighter beneath it. Caleb offered her canteen first. When she hesitated, he added, "The sun doesn't care about pride." That earned him the smallest flicker of a smile. She accepted the water but drank sparingly, then offered it back to him with a disciplined nod. Caleb poured the rest gently over the Mustang's lips. After a moment, the animal stirred weakly. He stood and wiped his hands on his trousers. "My ranch is just over that ridge. I can bring a wagon to haul your horse, get you both out of this heat." Nayeli lifted her chin. "You helped me already. I cannot accept without giving something in return." Her voice carried an iron certainty that left no room for argument. Caleb raised his palms. "No debt between us, just offering help." Nayeli stepped forward, and for a brief moment, Caleb felt small, not in fear but in awe. She stood tall as a pine tree, her shadow stretching over him like a protective shield. "Where I come from," she said, "to receive aid without repayment is dishonor. Let me work. Let me repay the balance." Caleb considered pressing the matter, but something in her expression, firm, unyielding, yet not unkind, told him resistance would be pointless and perhaps insulting. "Fine," he accepted with a reluctant nod. "You can rest at the ranch and help however you see fit." Nayeli's gaze did not soften. "I do not rest," she said, "I work." With Caleb's help, she managed to lift the Mustang, though he suspected she could have done it alone if pride demanded it. Together, they guided the limping animal toward the ranch, moving through stretches of sunburnt grass and scattered mesquite trees. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like two storms walking side by side, each cautious of the other's strength. When they reached Caleb's ranch, the quiet homestead seemed to watch Nayeli with ancient curiosity. She looked over the worn fences, the dried troughs, and the half-mended barn with an assessing eye. She set the Mustang to rest in the shade, then turned back to Caleb. "What needs doing?" she said. He almost told her nothing, but the truth sat heavy on the land. His ranch had been falling apart faster than he could patch it, yet he couldn't bring himself to burden a grieving woman. "We'll see in the morning," he murmured, trying to send her inside to rest. But Naeli didn't budge. "You gave to me," she repeated. "I give back." The fading light cast a bronze glow across her strong features. Caleb finally nodded, knowing this was not a woman one argued with easily. As the sun dipped beneath the red cliffs, she helped water the horse, gather wood, and secure the ranch entrance. She worked silently, efficiently, with the confidence of someone who had survived harsher lands than these. Caleb watched her, trying to understand how a person could carry so much grief on their face, and yet so much strength in their bones. When darkness settled across the desert, Caleb set out blankets in the small guest room, unused for years. Naeli stepped inside, pausing only once to bow her head slightly in thanks. Caleb didn't expect conversation. Solitude had taught him not to, but just before she disappeared behind the door, she turned. "You have lived alone long," she said, not asking but stating. Caleb's breath hitched. "Long enough," he replied quietly. Naeli nodded once, reading more from his voice than he intended to reveal. She said nothing more, but when she closed the door, Caleb felt the air shift again, a subtle change, like the first cool breeze before monsoon rains. Something had arrived at his ranch that was neither danger nor trouble, but something far harder for a lonely man to face, the possibility of change. For the first time in years, Caleb stood in the dark silence of his home and felt like a stranger in his own loneliness, as though it no longer fit him the way it used to. And all because a giant Apache widow had appeared on the ridge that day, standing tall beside a dying horse. The next morning began before sunrise, when the faint blue light washed across the desert and the ranch still slept in silence. Caleb woke to the sound of steady footsteps outside, and for a brief moment he wondered if he was dreaming. But when he stepped onto the porch, he saw Naeli already working, her tall silhouette moving with calm purpose as she hauled 2 full water barrels toward the trough, barrels he usually needed a mule to drag. She didn't look tired, nor did she pause. She worked as though she had been born to tame the land itself. Caleb approached, half bewildered, half impressed. "You're up early," he said, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Naeli didn't stop moving. "The sun waits for no one," she replied. "Work must begin before it rises." She set the barrels down with a thud that echoed across the yard. The Mustang, recovering in the shade, lifted its head in acknowledgement of its mistress. Caleb wasn't used to anyone working beside him, and he found himself strangely aware of her presence, like a second heartbeat in a life that had known only one for too long. By mid-morning, Naeli had already repaired a section of the corral fence, chopped a stack of wood that would last Caleb 2 weeks, and swept the barn clean with a discipline that left him speechless. When he finally dared to approach her with a cup of water, she looked at it but shook her head. "Not until the debt is paid," she said firmly. "You helped me and my horse. Today, I serve." Caleb wasn't sure whether to argue or step aside, so he did what any sensible man would do. He accepted her resolve. Near noon, the land grew still, except for the distant buzz of cicadas. Caleb had just stepped inside to grab tools when he heard the sharp sound of hooves approaching from the west. His hand instinctively reached for his rifle. Outlaws had been roaming these territories lately, stealing cattle and threatening isolated ranches like his. He stepped outside and saw 3 riders coming fast, their posture careless and predatory. Before he could position himself, Naeli stepped forward, tall and unflinching, planting herself between the riders and the ranch, as though she were a wall carved from stone. The bandits slowed when they saw her. One of them squinted and spat. "What's this?" he muttered. The second rider nudged the first. "A woman," he said, confused. "A giant woman." The third leaned back in his saddle, unease flickering across his face. "She's Apache," he whispered. "And a widow." Something about the word widow carried weight even they didn't want to test. Naeli didn't reach for a weapon, she didn't shout. She simply stood tall, her presence radiating the silent warning of someone who had buried her dead and survived every enemy who tried to join them. "Leave," she said quietly, her voice carrying across the dry air like a drawn blade. The leader scoffed, but Naeli took one step forward, and in that small motion alone, the bandits recoiled as though the earth itself had shifted under them. Caleb watched in stunned silence as the 3 hardened men turned their horses around and retreated without a fight. When they vanished from sight, Naeli finally breathed out, though her posture remained firm. Caleb walked toward her slowly, astonished. "You just saved my ranch," he said, voice thick with gratitude and disbelief. Nayeli's expression didn't change. You saved me first, she reminded him, once again grounding everything in her unwavering sense of balance and honor. Caleb found himself searching for words that wouldn't come. It had been years since someone stood between him and danger, years since he felt protected by anything other than his own worn rifle. As she resumed working without hesitation, he realized he was witnessing a kind of strength he had never known existed, a strength born not from pride, but from purpose, from loss, and from the need to keep moving forward no matter what the world took away. As the afternoon burned on, the two of them worked side by side. Caleb saw that Nayeli didn't just work with strength, she worked with precision. Her hands were steady, her focus unbreakable. She understood horses, tools, and land with a kind of instinct that matched his own. Conversations remained sparse, but the silence between them grew warm instead of empty. He found himself watching her more than he meant to, studying the way the light caught the turquoise in her hair, and the way her shadow stretched long and protective across the ground. By sunset, the ranch looked almost new. The fences stood straight, the barn was fortified, the troughs full, and the land felt alive again. Caleb handed her a bowl of stew that he'd prepared, and this time she accepted it without protest. They sat outside the barn, the sky painted in shades of red and gold as the sun dipped behind the distant mesas. For the first time since she arrived, Nayeli seemed to let a small part of her grief loosen. My husband was a brave man, she said softly. But grief is a long road. Today, you gave me a place to rest my feet on that road. Caleb swallowed the tightness in his throat. You're welcome here, he said quietly, for as long as you need. Nayeli looked at him with an expression that held gratitude, strength, and something else, something he didn't dare name. I leave at dawn, she said. My people wait. Caleb nodded, though the words stung more than he expected. When dawn finally came, Nayeli saddled her recovering Mustang. Before she mounted, she took a turquoise bead from her braid and placed it gently in Caleb's hand. For luck, she said, and so you remember, a lone man does not have to stay alone.